Was anyone going to tell me that my sword instructor is Nico D'Angelo, or was I just supposed to watch him hug Percy Jackson and Jason Grace myself? Written by A Tomb with a View. Read by My Lost and Found. Summary. Stacy cannot figure out why Nicky, her funny, ripped, handsome sword fighting instructor, is sat at the Big Three table with the heroes of Olympus, Percy Jackson and Jason Grace. Stacy wasn't glaring. She absolutely was not glaring at the Big Three table, where for some reason, the guy who taught her sword fighting was sat. Sure, she didn't know his godly parent. No one in their class had managed to get it out of him. But she was the daughter of Apollo. She was supposed to have premonitions about whether or not the hot boy instructing her and 10 other kids on how to wield deadly weapons was also a super powerful son of the Big Three. Sure, maybe Will had mentioned that his boyfriend, a son of Hades, taught sword fighting, but she'd never actually seen Will's boyfriend, and therefore, there was no way Nicky was a son of Hades. Sons of Hades did not spend 6 hours every Tuesday and Thursday patiently teaching 13 and 14-year-olds how to fight. Sons of Hades most certainly did not take off their shirts when it got too hot. Sons of Hades almost definitely did not blush endearingly when Drew Tanica from Aphrodite wolf whistled as she walked past the arena. And the Sons of Hades undoubtedly did not speak fluid and fluent Italian at unwitting, easily flustered teenage girls. Besides, Will's boyfriend was Nico D'Angelo, who Stacy had heard was as much of a vital player in the last two wars as Percy Jackson, who had apparently dragged Percy Jackson to the River Styx so he could get the Curse of Achilles, who had, according to rumor, jumped into Tartarus before Percy Jackson and Annabeth Chase, and who had almost definitely carried the Athena Parthenos from Greece to Camp Half-Blood, alongside the praetor of New Rome, who now considered him a little brother. Nicky, gorgeous, ripped, and funny as he may be, was definitely nothing like Nico D'Angelo. So, why in Apollo's name was Nicky sat at the Big Three table, squabbling and play-fighting with Jason Grace and Percy Jackson, like they weren't two of the most sought-after male demigods alive? Before Stacy could ask, Nicky, Jason Grace, and Percy Jackson all stood up and walked out, the rest of the 7 who were still at camp falling into step, all laughing and shoving each other around. After a moment, Will had started to stand up. "Poker night at Percy's! Neeks will kill me if I leave him alone in there with Jason and Percy," he explains at Kayla's questioning glance. Kayla nodded. "Okay, tell Nico he owes me a pomegranate from Persephone's garden. I've got some theories I want to test." Stacy almost screamed. Nobody knew Nico D'Angelo that well outside of Will and the 7 and Praetor Reyna. How did Kayla end up with him owing her one? How did Nicky end up invited to this heroes and their girlfriends and boyfriends only poker game? How had Will managed to assimilate into their group so well? Even Calypso, Leo Valdez's girlfriend, hadn't managed to slot so neatly into their group as Stacy's brother, who seemed as friendly with Annabeth Chase and Piper McLean as they were with each other. The next day at sword fighting, Stacy resolved to finally get the truth out of Nicky. How did he know Percy Jackson and Jason Grace? How did he get permission to sit at the Big Three table? Where had he been eating before that? She never really saw him at mealtimes. Who was his godly parent? That was all completely destroyed when she walked into the arena with Lacey and Haley to see Jason Grace and Percy Jackson waiting with Nicky. "All I'm saying, bro," Percy was saying loudly, grinning broadly and gesturing wildly, "is that you showing up to the Battle of Manhattan like 2 days into the fighting with 3 gods and an army of the undead is basically the same as you showing up to the counselor's meeting 15 minutes late with a Starbucks. Therefore, you should do it." Nicky rolled his eyes. Chiron, Annabeth, Will, Clercy, and probably Lou Ellen would all kill me if I did that. Individually, Will would call Hades and be like, "Oh hey, future dad-in-law, could you hold this idiot soul in place so that me and all my friends can kill him all over again?" Jason sighed dramatically. "Or you could just bring everyone else Starbucks as well, bro. Then no one would hate you, and everyone would feel free to appreciate the meme." Nicky paused for a sec. "Okay, that would work." He made an over-exaggerated expression of disgust. "Bro." The other two cheered and bounced into and off of each other, chanting as he called bro. "Hold up!" Jason's eyes had gone crazy wide, and he threw his arms out to stop Percy. Stacy was definitely confused. "You just said Hades is Will's future dad-in-law. You're planning to marry our very own Dr. Stolas. You know that Annabeth, Percy, and the entire Apollo cabin, Clearcy, Cecile, and Lou Ellen are going to shovel talk you, right?" Wait, what? Nicky went red, but he didn't deny it. "You are aware that the shovel talk happens at the start of relationships, right? I've already had the shovel talks from everyone you've listed, except Percy, because he's my big brother, so he can't shovel talk me regarding Will. Annie just threatened both of us." Percy seemed to finally rejoin the conversation. "I have just considered something. Neeks, you showing up to the Battle of Manhattan 2 days late with 3 gods, an army, and a sassy one-liner. Were you trying to flirt with me?" Jason absolutely lost it, while Nicky's lips curled with disgust. "Dude, I was like 12. Sure, I was trying to impress you, but I wasn't trying to actually flirt. I still don't know how to do that, and I've been in a relationship for like 2 years. Anyway, I'll do the Starbucks thing if you two take any and all blame. Both of your girlfriends wield sharp, pointy things incredibly well, and Will probably hold an arrow in his hand and stab me with it." The other two lost it again, and in turning away to roll his eyes, Nico, finally noticed them. "Oh," he said dumbly. "Shit, is it Tuesday?" "You're Nico D'Angelo?" Stacy blurted out, unable to stop herself. She'd heard the story about the Battle of Manhattan, about how Nico D'Angelo had managed to persuade the king and queen of the underworld, as well as Demeter, to fight alongside an army of the undead. Plus, it would explain everything about last night, even if she couldn't exactly reconcile one of the heroes of Olympus with the guy she'd been crushing on for months. Nico blinked. "I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about," he managed, before Will, who'd been sat in the stands of the arena, completely unnoticed, started laughing and walking down to join them. "I told you!" he crowed, wrapping an arm around Nico. "I told you that if you started socializing with your idiot brothers in front of people, everyone would know." Percy and Jason looked suitably offended. "Wait, what the fuck is happening here?" Nico shrugged. "In my first lesson, I introduced myself as Nico D'Angelo, and someone told me that I was an emo wannabe who wished I was a son of Hades, that couldn't get Will Solis to bang me if I had the blessing of Aphrodite herself. So I just introduced myself to all the classes as Nicky and waited for someone to notice. It's been 8 months." "You didn't think of just, I don't know, shadow traveling?" Jason asked after a moment. Percy shook his head. "I bet it was the best moment of his life," he grinned. "Neeks has always loved a chance to fuck with people." "You realize that if any of you actually referred to me by my name, then none of this would have happened, right? Neeks isn't that weird for Nicky, and ever since you two morons helped me secretly put a kitchen in my cabin, I haven't had to go out for meals. You aided and abated." "I'm pretty sure you have to be aware of what's going on to aid and abate, babe," Will mused. "If you're on your way somewhere, and I tell you the Park Avenue is closed and there's a shortcut around back, which means you happen to get murdered whilst you're around back, I haven't exactly aided and abated." Tesoro, if I end up dead because of your instructions you gave me, I'd take over the judges panel downstairs and send you to Exilium for services rendered to the Prince of the Underworld, Nico retorted, wincing when the crowd of chattering teens went silent, even as Percy and Jason practically screamed with laughter. Sunshine. Will thunked his forehead on the top of Nico's head and stayed like that. What did we talk about? Nico heaved a sigh. No scaring children or mortals with jokes about my unrelenting wish for death because they wouldn't understand if I really just wanted to die, I'd hit my dad and offer my soul. So obviously, I'm not actually suicidal. He recited dutifully. Pops totally wouldn't take your soul. Will waved a hand dismissively. He likes me too much. Pops? Pops? Nico flushed red. Stacy was honestly surprised he was alive with how much blood was rushing to his face. Will went in my stead for lunch last Sunday with my mom and dad. They got all weird and awkward and said Will could call them mom and dad too if they wanted. Since that would be weird, he calls them mom and pops, so as to not confuse them with his mama and dad. Stacy clutched Haley's hand. I need to lay down, she whispered. I'm so stupid. We're all so stupid, she lamented. Haley nodded dramatically. Nico D'Angelo sleeps in our cabin with Will sometimes, and we didn't notice he and Nicky are the same person. Lacey peeked over. You guys really didn't know? What? Did you? Stacy was tempted to shriek, but managed to keep her voice down. Sure. Lacey shrugged. Nico and Piper are super close. He and Drew and Mitch are pretty good friends too. He's in my cabin, like, all the time. He lets us dress him up before dates with Will. The next thing Stacy knew, she was laying in a cot in the infirmary, Will leaning over her head. You okay, Stace? She groaned and nodded. You didn't tell us our sword-fighting instructor was Nico D'Angelo, traitor. He laughed. Stace, he stays over in our cabin all the time. I thought y'all calling him Nicky was a running joke. I don't have night vision. All I ever see is his dark hair in your bed, and sometimes an aviator jacket hung on your hook of the door. She pouted. Why didn't you tell us your boyfriend is super hot? I do. He raised an eyebrow. All the time. Kayla and Austin timed how long I talk about Neeks and make me stop after 2 minutes. She narrowed her eyes. You're still a traitor. Even if I assign the hottest guy in camp to bring you your lunch? He made air quotes around hottest guy in camp. Did you? Really? Will, you're the best. Actually, a voice said from the other side of the room. I have the food, so I think that makes me the best. Oh fuck! Nico D'Angelo was walking towards her in a tank top. The silvery scars crossing over his arms, the scars Stacy now realized were probably from fighting Lycon, clearly visible. He handed her the tray he was holding, then tucked himself into Will's side. Hey, luz de la sol, he murmured, pressing a kiss to Will's cheek. Do you think Jay and Pierce will kill me if I show up to the Big 3 movie night half an hour late with bed hair and McDonald's? I want to nap him some McNuggets.